It's time to talk about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. Today, I've got my review of The Odyssey. I was able to see this movie early. These are going to be my honest, spoiler-free thoughts on the film. When it comes to this movie, it was my most anticipated of the entire year. I love Christopher Nolan. Anytime he's got a new movie coming out, it's undeniably an event, so I was very much anticipating this. The marketing had won me over. The cast is all-star, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut to the chase. This movie absolutely rules, and it is my favorite movie of 2026. I haven't felt this way walking out of a movie in a few years. I mean, I would say 2024 is the last time a new release had me feeling this amped as the credits rolled. So it's been a while for me personally, and it brings me nothing but joy to report that this movie delivers across the board. I mean, if you were a hardcore Nolan fan, this is your most anticipated movie of the year, and you're concerned, you can drop the worries because it's most likely going to work for you. I can't speak for everybody, but it should probably work for you if you're a Nolan fan. But let's get down to business, all right? When it comes down to it, this is an adaptation of Homer's The Odyssey. You probably know the story, at least you should. And so because of that, there is a familiar feeling with this film, but it has the Nolan touch, the Nolan flair. I kind of compare it to Steven Spielberg's West Side Story in that sense. Not at all when it comes to movie, but in the sense that Spielberg wanted to adapt this famous musical that obviously had already been done many times, but he wanted to take it and make it his own. That's what he did with West Side Story. That is what we're seeing Nolan do with The Odyssey here. He has taken the classic story, adapted it into this 3-hour epic on film, and he's done it his way. Now, what do I mean by the Nolan way? Well, obviously, you're following Odysseus' journey home to Ithaca, and he's going to face various obstacles along the way, but it might not be told in your conventional mode of storytelling. It's a Nolan film, so it goes without saying there are some non-linear story elements. I don't think Nolan's actually ever made a film that doesn't feature some semblance of non-linearity, and that's exactly what you're getting here with The Odyssey. Matt Damon is the anchor of this film when it comes to performances. He is Odysseus, and I've always loved Matt Damon. Jason Bourne, Good Will Hunting, The Departed, the list goes on and on. He's even got a great supporting role as Linus in the Ocean's film. So to see him have his time to shine as the lead in a Nolan film, it feels warranted, justified. This could be his best performance. It's tough to pinpoint one with him. I will not be surprised at all when he's nominated for Best Actor, though. I mean, the movie's literally on his shoulders. I've seen cast interviews of them saying Matt Damon was such a leader behind the scenes. That shows on screen. It's such a physical performance. You can tell it was draining. There are moments where he's facing obstacles and there's this hopelessness on his face, but he always finds a way to persist. His character does. Damon just brought his A game here. In fact, the entire cast brought their A game. Anne Hathaway as Penelope has a few moments that really sent chills down my spine just with the way she's able to convey emotions and a longing for Odysseus to return. Tom Holland, I mean, we've known him as Spider-Man, so I don't get to see him a lot outside of the MCU, but him as Telemachus, Odysseus' son here, he brought it as well. He has a couple moments where you're just like, hell yeah, I dig it. And then you got on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you got Robert Pattinson, who is such a good asshole in movies. Can we all agree on that? Like, he just excels at playing freaky little characters who can be complete cowards and also a-holes. That's who he is here. But a good comp for The Odyssey, in my opinion, is the movie Gladiator. It's a modern-day classic, 2000 Best Picture winner. When it comes down to that movie, you got Russell Crowe playing Maximus Decimus Meridius. He gets into some fight sequences. There's some action, some badassery, right? But it's a very human story at its core. That's exactly how I feel about The Odyssey. It's epic in scale. It's grand. You've got, Odysseus going up against Polyphemus the Cyclops and Charybdis and Scylla, all these mythological beasts and entities. So you have that sense of almost adventure, the quest of it all, but it's much deeper than just that. There's lots of layers here. Odysseus himself is trying to find the inner strength to maintain his peace and journey home. He is doing whatever it takes to get him and his men home, but at what cost? On top of that, he's trying to retain his own values, his identity, and not lose his sense of self. It is such a thematically rich story that perfectly blends the Nolan flair with the action and spectacle. The Odyssey is one of the foundational pieces of literature. It basically defines the hero's journey. It's such a classic hero's journey brought to the screen. How can you not root for Odysseus? So I think this movie, while grand in scale, while ambitious, is easily accessible for everyone. It's definitely a lot to process, but it's not like Tenet or Memento. It's It's fairly straightforward for a Christopher Nolan movie. Yes, there are non-linear elements, but you can put the pieces of the puzzle together and follow along fairly easily, I would say. Christopher Nolan has always been someone who tries to capture as much as he can in camera, and that shows here. You know, I list out some of the obstacles, right? One of them being Cyclops Polyphemus. You see this massive puppet, and then you've shot this film on location with actual boats that were constructed on actual bodies of water, on actual islands with real swords and props. There's no volume screens. There's no clear CGI. Every penny of the budget went to making it look as realistic as possible. They rarely make movies like this anymore if you think about it. So much emphasis has been put on computer-generated effects, doing things in post-production. With this movie, so much of it is gorgeous and just automatically feels like you are transported into the world because you can buy into the fact that every single frame of this movie is real and actually happening. There's no disconnect with the audience because it's authentic. Everything feels genuine, and it's so rare nowadays for a movie of this caliber to have you feeling that way, where you're like, yeah, I totally buy into this story. I think this could happen. I walked out of this film and said to my fiance on the car ride home, this is a movie that in 20 to 30 years, people will be talking about as a must-watch. Kids will be like, you got to see The Odyssey on the big screen? It'll be a story to tell because it's that impactful. And I'm not one to come out of movies often in the year 2026 and be like, that was all-time stuff. But The Odyssey is an exception. I save this type of praise for movies like The Odyssey. And I've had a really good feeling about this movie since I was able to see a snippet from it in 70mm IMAX when I went and saw Project Hail Mary. And so I kind of knew what I was getting into. It was the whole Trojan horse sequence. And that just had me so locked in that I had a really damn good feeling about this. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Ludwig Göransson's score. I'm so impressed by how every time he takes on a new project, he approaches the sound differently. I've seen a featurette on how he composed the score for this film, and he was using instruments and objects and materials from that time period. So he doesn't have an orchestra here. It's a beautiful score. He's operating another level right now. He had Sinners, Black Panther, really, really impressive stuff. Of course, Oppenheimer, but I think Ludwig is becoming very, very quickly the modern day Hans Zimmer and John Williams. He's probably going to reach those levels. I mean, he already has the Oscars to kind of show for it, but years from now, he'll be in the conversation of greatest composer of all time for film scores. So The Odyssey's epic in scale. The sheer magnitude of the film is genuinely awe-inspiring. How it's shot on location, the performances are just out of this world. There are themes that are applicable to modern day times, especially in the third act, because the first two acts of this movie, Odysseus going through a lot of obstacles. Don't want to say too much if you don't know the story, but in the third act, everything is brought home. It ties the film together beautifully, gives closure to this story, right? This journey, this odyssey, if you will, but it ends on a note that will leave the audience questioning, how does this impact our world today? How is what happens in the end here applicable to modern day leadership, to society today? I think there's a lot to be said there. Nolan's always had that ability to end his films on a note that makes the audience ponder connections to modern day, and he crushed that here yet again with The Odyssey. On top of that, Nolan blends genres. We get a full-on horror sequence involving body horror. It's genuinely gross and had me wincing with the sound effects. But this was new territory for Nolan as he essentially blends genres time and time again throughout The Odyssey. At the end of the day, The Odyssey lived up to the hype for me. There were high expectations going in. I walk out and I say, yeah, that's a 5 out of 5. I haven't been able to do that since 2024 with the new movie, and that's a great damn feeling to have such high hopes for something and for it to deliver. I was over the moon in my out-of-theater reaction because I had just watched the movie, so the initial buzz was still there. It has not worn off remotely. I'm seeing this movie tomorrow in 70mm IMAX, the way it was intended to be seen. First time with 70mm film. I think I'll be even more engrossed in the story this time. And with the movie clocking at almost 3 hours, around the midway point, when you know the obstacles, you can start to wonder, is this going to get a little repetitive? And then the third act rolls around, and boy, let me tell you, whoo, the third act of this movie delivers. It's probably my favorite of the film. Just like how Oppenheimer goes full courtroom drama, the third act of The Odyssey shifts things up a little bit. In like the final 20 minutes, I can't even describe. I was just like on cloud nine. So yes, The Odyssey rules. It's my favorite movie of the year. It's going to be hard to dethrone, and I got a Nolan ranking coming later this week. Interested to see where it lands. You'll want to stay tuned for that. The Odyssey delivered and then some. But those are my thoughts on The Odyssey. Let me know yours down below and your expectations and hopes for the film if you have not yet seen it. Hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and be on the lookout for more videos coming very soon. But thank you guys, as always, for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.